Hey, I hear some vehicles coming down the road. How far? All right, let's go. Hey, wait up! Hey! Dude, my back hurts. My hips hurt. How are you moving so fast?
Let me see your ruck.
Okay.
What does this thing weigh, like 70 pounds?
You bet. And there's not even water in there.
Yeah, you're gonna have to leave this.
Well, I got my extra uniforms, my canned chili. I can't just leave that stuff behind.
Whew, this is my fault. We'll get you dialed in. Why is lightening your load important? Let's start with an example that could be relevant to you in the future. If you're familiar with the story of Marcus Luttrell, you've probably seen the movie Lone Survivor. A team of 4 Navy SEALs are on a mission in the mountains of Afghanistan when they're compromised by some goat herders who then alert hundreds of Taliban fighters that there's some American soldiers up in the mountains watching them. The SEALs know that their position is compromised, so they grab everything and book it. But even though they have a decent head start, the enemy eventually swarms their position.
How fucking fast are these guys? Fast.
A massive firefight ensues, and everything goes downhill from there, literally. Now, I guarantee those SEALs were in better shape than every one of the Afghans that caught up with them, but the SEALs were weighed down, and the only weight the other guys were carrying was AKs and man jammies.
I just don't understand how fast they were, man. Faster than we are.
So imagine the opposite. If these SEALs weren't so weighed down, could the outcome have been different? Increased weight means you move slower, chance of injury goes up, and if you're evading an enemy force that outnumbers you, those things could mean the difference between life and death. Now, I'm way oversimplifying this story. Let me be the first to say I'm not saying what they should or shouldn't have done. The guys were studs, and I'm not questioning their actions on this mission at all. I know somebody's still going to get mad, but you're not a Navy SEAL, you can't say. I get it. But most people have seen the movie. I'm just using this as a visual tool to focus in on one specific aspect of combat, which is your carried weight. So think about this. As a civilian, if you ever find yourself in a combat situation, there's a good chance the other guys will have more men, more armor, more firepower, and maybe what's more likely to keep you alive is more speed, not more body armor or more equipment. Extra weight might actually get you killed. Now, I don't know what the future holds, but let's say for today's video that the country has been overrun by communists. A Red Dawn situation, if you will. You're now fighting a guerrilla war against a large professional adversary who's better equipped. It would be foolish to think that you're going to beat them fighting the way they want to fight. And history shows that too. Heck, our history shows that. Would we even be a country if we had fought the British exactly the way they wanted to fight? So let's say you live in an area where the enemy is near some wooded or mountainous terrain. You're planning on doing something that's going to get them real ticked off, and then you're going to disappear into the woods or mountains. In this case, we're trying to pack as light as possible so that we can cover a lot of distance and disappear for a few days, maybe a week, before making our way back. So I've been trying to learn from the ultralight backpacking community and apply it to the military for a long time now. I'm not a thru hiker, but I have spent way too much time carrying too much weight in the military, and I've tried to reduce that weight as much as I can. So let me share what I've learned, because I think it actually benefits prepared citizens or civilians more than the military guys out there watching this. But before we keep going, we've got to give a shout out to our sponsors.
Absolutely nobody!
Yeah, I'm joking. We have no sponsors except 18 Arrows, which is the company I started. And we only have one product that we just recently launched after working on it for a long time. It's called the Ruck Belt, and I'm wearing it right now. Essentially, it's a really high-quality belt specifically designed for wearing with a pack and for carrying concealed. It's thinner than any belt I've ever heard of. It's adjustable with hook and loop, like so. And because it's only a 0.5 millimeter thin, it's perfect for wearing when you're carrying a pack because your belt can't dig into your hips. And it's also perfect for carrying concealed because it prevents your waistline from sticking out any further than it has to. If you're interested, you can find it at 18arrows.com or just click on the link in the description. All right, back to combat ultralight. So Jeff Gerwich at Modern Tactical Shooting is a retired Green Beret, and he put together a fantastic video recently about how the current U.S. soldier is carrying more weight now than arguably any soldier in the history of mankind. The military has done plenty of research over the years showing that you really don't want to carry more than a third of your body weight in gear, and they actually came up with a general number back in the 1950s, which is that anything over 45 pounds, a soldier's performance really starts to decline. More modern research puts the number you want at around 40 pounds for your fighting load and 55 pounds for your sustainment load, meaning including your rucksack. And on an individual level, when you're carrying too much weight, I can tell you it's not just, oh, you're more tired or you can't walk as far in a day. No, it also means even if you're in excellent shape and you can say, sure, I can walk all day and all night with 100 pounds on my back, what happens is when you're carrying a lot of weight, your attention over time shifts from your surroundings to just droning and just looking at where you're walking, because that kind of weight takes a physical and mental toll. And either you need to be the world's most disciplined soldier to maintain good situational awareness, or you might walk into an ambush because you're carrying too much weight and you don't have the mental capacity to be focused on too much outside of just carrying the weight. Now, why is the military weighed down more than any soldier in history? You could say it's higher leadership mandating additional equipment to mitigate risk, and you do see that a lot in training, but look, there's risk with everything. Carrying the extra gear also comes with risk, and if you're an infantry soldier, in addition to carrying your personal gear and combat load, you're probably also carrying a bunch of belt-fed ammo, heavy combo equipment, extra batteries, mortar rounds, maybe an anti-tank weapon. Any dreams of being ultralight are gone. You're pretty much hosed. So I'm really talking to the civilians out there, the prepared citizens, the LARPers, the gun guys, whatever you want to call it, when I say don't try to be kitted out like a conventional infantry soldier if in whatever future timeline you're imagining, you're up against a conventional military. If the fictional Red Dawn situation happens and you're fighting the Russians or the Chinese on U.S. soil, don't fight the fight that they're fighting using the same tactics, just straight up going against infantry battalions and tanks. And if you're asking yourself, okay, well then why would I be wearing camo or running around in the woods? You're asking the right questions. And maybe we'll talk about that in a future video. Here's what I'll say. I don't know what the future holds. If a foreign power can invade, society collapses into civil war, maybe just another scaled up summer of love. But hey, ideally things just keep getting better, and the worst thing you ever need to be prepared for is a power outage. But in my opinion, keyword being opinion, this generation, this fourth turning could absolutely see something unprecedented happen. And I don't think it's our military that'll save us or our special operators, although I certainly hope everyone does their part. No, I think if America is going to be free, it's going to be the civilian population of prepared, freedom-loving Americans that's going to keep it free. So back to the topic at hand, an ultralight combat load. As a civilian, I think this is possible, even out in rough terrain like the mountains, because usually you don't even have access to things like heavy weapons or mortars. So why not lean into that? Be as fast and light as possible, so if you're outnumbered and outgunned, it really doesn't matter, because you should be gone way before getting into a gunfight like that. So why should you listen to me? What are my credentials? It doesn't matter. Do I have some? Sure, but I'm trying really hard not to lean on that, because I think credentials, degrees, certifications, lab coats, fancy uniforms, we put way too much trust in that. And while experience does matter, with maybe a few exceptions, I definitely have not experienced exactly whatever it is you're training for. So do I have the credentials? Sure, but you shouldn't listen to me because of that. I've learned a ton from guys who have no credentials at all. They're just really good at what they do. So I'm going to do my best to make a strong case for you to think about some ways you can lighten your combat load and the theory behind it. And the goal isn't for you to go out and buy exactly what I show in this video, because we live in different environments and we could be training for totally different things. So even if you disagree with everything in this video because it doesn't make sense for you, that's still a win, because you're thinking more deeply about why you carry what you carry, even if it's just hypothetical. And hopefully I can make this somewhat controversial and get some people riled up, because that's just more fun. All right, now let's dive into actual weights. And we're going to kind of blend the weight limits we talked about earlier and say, you know what, let's stick to that 45-pound limit for everything we're carrying, because if you're conducting an ambush and then sprinting off into the mountains for a few days, you can't really do that without your pack, because the equipment in there is stuff you need to survive in a harsh environment, especially if you're being pursued and you might end up in a gunfight. And before you start taking notes, most of the gear I talk about, I'll put it in the description to save you time so you can just listen. Okay, this rifle with a loaded mag weighs 12.5 pounds. This chest rig with 6 loaded mags, navigation, radio, first aid, signaling kit, cleaning kit. I'll just lay everything out here so you can see it all. Now our current total is 27 pounds. That means we'd have to keep the ruck under 18 pounds in order to stay under 45 pounds total. So let's see if we can pull that off. Here's the ruck completely full, and here it is with everything laid out. First, this empty ruck with these additional pouches weighs about 8.5 pounds. If you wanted to save more weight, you could use something like this. Weighing in at only 1.5 pounds, that's a huge weight savings, but this pack isn't as comfortable when loaded down. It takes longer to access things, and it's obviously not as durable, which is the main issue, nor is it built to carry more than about 40 pounds. Also, I don't like the idea of a black backpack, and you can't spray paint this because the paint won't stick to the material, but you can use tape on the front straps and throw some pack scrim on the back. Now it weighs about 2 pounds, and you're good to go. And for those out there rolling your eyes at the idea of using Dyneema fabrics or an ultralight pack like this, yeah, for the military, I wouldn't use this. As a civilian, I might. Although I definitely also bring some 550 cord so that you could repair it if you needed to. That said, overall, something like this Stone Glacier pack is more popular because it's more durable than the true ultralight packs that are 2 pounds or less. And the Dyneema fabrics work great for hiking on trails, but when you're off trail, I think the increased weight for durability is worth it in this case. Now in the ultralight world, guys typically talk about base weight, meaning your pack, your shelter, and your sleep system being the big 3 heaviest things, as well as everything that's non-expendable. So in a combat setting, I think we could also include ammo in the expendable category. So here's the weights. This Stone Glacier pack, empty, 8 pounds, 8 ounces. The whole sleep system and shelter, including the waterproof stuff sack and vapor barrier liner, 4 pounds. So this setup should be comfortable down to about freezing temperatures. There's a really lightweight down sleeping bag made by Western Mountaineering, that's under 1 pound. A bivy sack made by Mountain Laurel Designs, also under 1 pound. A Thermarest sleeping pad, which is basically the ultralight gold standard. It's 20 ounces, and with the vapor barrier liner, which is essentially like sleeping in a trash bag within your sleeping bag, except nicer. Typically in below freezing temperatures, these can be used to keep you warmer and also prevent moisture from getting into the down sleeping bag if you're going to be using it repeatedly without getting a chance to dry it out, which is likely in our situation. Now the next item is half in the sleeping category, half in the clothing category. It's the Hill People Gear Mountain Serape. Weighing in at 2 pounds, 1 ounce. Instead of bringing a jacket into the mountains, I'm taking this. You can wear it as a jacket to stay warm, and you can also zip this into a sleeping bag, put it around the down sleeping bag, and now this whole sleep system and shelter at 4 pounds plus the Serape can keep you warm well below freezing. The survival temperature where you'd really be pushing it is estimated to be around 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, which I haven't tested, just full disclosure. I'll have to wait till winter to do that. I'm not even sure how you would test the survival limit for a setup, but that's the estimate, which is awesome for a 3-season setup. Okay, all the other clothing in this waterproof bag weighs in at 2 pounds, 4 ounces. Here's what we've got. A merino wool t-shirt, alpaca socks, a wind layer, an Alpha Direct insulation layer, and a rain jacket and rain pants. Also some lightweight cold weather gloves and a beanie. All this stuff is extremely light. I'll touch on a couple things. The Alpha Direct material was designed for military use as an active insulation layer, even though I've never actually seen it issued. This layer weighs 8 ounces and it works really well with the wind layer, also only 8 ounces. And the waterproof rain jacket only weighs 6 ounces. Sure, it's not as durable as other heavier stuff, but I've worn this thing through multiple unconventional warfare training exercises where there is quite a bit of rain. So I wore it a lot, and the only damage was from using a clothespin to pin an armband onto the jacket. So I really was impressed at how tough something in the ultralight category can actually be. The jacket's made by Enlightened Equipment, and the rain pants, these are made by Z-Packs, and they only weigh 4 ounces, which is insane. This is an area I'm accepting some risk in. It doesn't rain that much in my environment, and even when it does, I'm probably not putting on rain pants unless it's absolutely pouring or I'm stationary. So they don't have to be super tough because the odds of me using them while bushwhacking are pretty low. This poncho weighs 8 ounces. The lightest one I could find in a sil nylon material that's camouflage was on Amazon. And you could use this as a shelter as well as some camouflage in the rain. But I also recommend putting it under your bivy sack to add a little extra durability on rougher ground. All right, now this water bladder with a virus level filter plus an extra water storage bag weighs 14 ounces. This is the lightest solution I could find, and I really like it because of the level of filtration and the weight. You can choose from different levels of filters, and I think it's totally worth it to have a filter that'll remove viruses because you just may not know what kind of water source you could be forced to use. Now, whenever you need to fill up, just fill up this other bag. You could use a shirt or something as a coarse filter for this. Then you'll pour that into the hydration bladder. And it actually has a separate bag on top of the water that you can pump to fill with air, creating pressure to make it easier to push the water through the filter. The setup is made by Aquamira, and it's probably worth mentioning in the chest rig I've got a small Nalgene as well as iodine tablets, so if I had to completely ditch the pack, I could still get clean water. All right, knife. A fixed blade knife. I just have a hard time not bringing this into the woods. It weighs 4 ounces. Hygiene kit, 2 ounces. Toothbrush, little shovel, some TP, and these little guys. If you spray some water on them, they turn into a baby wipe. Pretty dorky, but pretty awesome. Now, I'd call this your base weight. For me, this 18.5 pounds is a 3-season pack that'll do well in the Rocky Mountains. For you, in a different environment, it might be less weight, it might be more. Now, that's not bad. Keep in mind that weight was dry, meaning no water, no food. So we're right at 45 pounds now with no food, no water, no special equipment. You can see how difficult this is because here are some additional optional items that'll increase your weight. And I'd put these in the highly recommended category for any modern conflict. Night vision, the whole setup, 2.5 pounds. This thermal unit, about 1 pound. Next thing is this thermal poncho coming in at 1 pound, 5 ounces. With an adversary that's advanced at all, meaning you may need to consider drones, this is something to strongly consider. That said, here's what your shelter could look like at night. Poncho on the ground, bivy sack with sleeping pad and sleeping bag inside, and thermal poncho strung up over top for additional concealment when you're at your most vulnerable. Next, spare batteries, like minimal spare batteries, about 8 ounces. If you want a way to keep everything charged indefinitely, I created a separate video on that, but that would be an additional 3 to 4 pounds for that capability. Smoke grenade, 8 ounces, and yes, you can get these as a civilian. Extra mags, roughly 1.1 pounds per mag. Jungle antenna, 11 ounces. This totally depends on your team size and terrain and how far you need to be able to communicate. And it's not actually a jungle antenna. Technically, I guess it's called a roll-up Slim Jim antenna. But basically, you can quickly connect it to your ham radio and throw it up into a tree for better range. And I'm just not a radio guy, so if you throw it up into a tree, I'm just going to call it a jungle antenna. Okay, spare med kit plus tourniquet, another 12 ounces. Also a minor incident field kit made by Canna Provisions, which is 2 ounces and great for anything that doesn't quite merit busting out your IFAC, which is really just meant for major injuries. And we kind of skipped over food. I'll cover that quickly. Realistically, the kind of food you have available is going to depend on the situation as well as your preparation. While I was putting this together, I figured, you know what? I've heard some really compelling stuff recently about the importance of quality food in performance, which sounds obvious, but let's be real, we still ignore it. There was a woman who broke a fast packing record recently, and one of the things she did different is she prioritized really healthy, fresh, nutrient-dense food whenever possible, and it made a huge difference in recovery every day. That was a big part of her breaking this record, which is pretty cool. So I asked myself, okay, what would I pack if I'm looking for lightweight, compact, healthy food? And in general, when you're packing food like this, you can count on roughly 1 pound to 1.5 pounds of food per day at 2,000 calories a day. Do you need more calories than that when you're covering a lot of miles? Yes. Do you need less than that if you're just hiding somewhere observing all day? Also yes. Can you get by just fine losing some weight every day? Also yes, but your performance is going to decrease. But anyways, these bars made by Green Belly have been super awesome. And then these cold soaked meals by Packet Gourmet, also fantastic. We're talking backpacker meal prices for this stuff, so it's not cheap, but there are a lot of cheaper alternatives that thru hikers use for cold soaking. They're just not going to be as fresh or as nutrient dense. And if you're not familiar with cold soaking, it just means you pour cold water in and let it soak for a bit, and then you can eat it. No heat required, which is fitting for this context. Okay, so here's an example loadout. Use the Stone Glacier pack with nods, thermals, extra batteries, knife, smoke grenade, and a double load of ammo. That's 7 mags on my person and another 7 on the pack. You'll notice I said on the pack because you can store mags along the sides of this pack, which is pretty freaking awesome. Along with 5 days of food plus 3 liters of water, we're looking at a pack weight of 44 pounds, which with rifle and chest rig brings the total carried weight to 71 pounds. Now, a pack that's under 45 pounds with all that gear is a dream come true for anyone in the military who's ever done like any extended combat training. And honestly, yeah, this is probably what I'd want to carry into today's fictional mission. You can see why, 1, it's so difficult to be under 45 pounds in combat when you're including your sustainment gear, and 2, why your fitness is so important. Really can't stress that enough. I mean, if you're looking for ways to decrease your pack weight by 30 pounds, and you happen to also have an excess 30 pounds on your body weight, I think you already know the answer. Now, for those who are absolutely beyond even considering using an ultralight pack, let me ask you this. If you had a hard limit of 45 pounds for all the gear you could take on a mission, what would you take out of the pack I just laid out? Not even counting the water, you'd have to drop all the food, all the extra ammo, the night vision, and all of your thermal equipment, including the thermal poncho. Or would you take the ultralight pack, less durable for sure, if that meant you could also keep the night vision, the thermal unit, and 3 days of food? Luckily, you don't really have to make that choice. I'm not even saying there's a right answer for that hypothetical question. The answer is pretty much always, it depends. Anyways, I hope I got you thinking more about the weight you're carrying or how you might adjust your gear. Let me know what you think. If you nerded out with me for this long, share your advice. Check out the ruck belt at 18arrows.com, and if there's a topic you'd like to hear about in a future video, let me know what that is. I read all the comments and I'd love to hear it. Last thing, remember rule number 1 is to always look cool. And rule number 2, as crazy as the world seems sometimes, and it absolutely is, remember all you can do is make your circle great, so just focus on doing the best you can within your circle of influence, and try to let go of some of that stress you're feeling over stuff you can't control. See you next time.